Curfew imposed in Colombo, Gampaha and Puttalam and 5 districts in the north lifted till 2 p.m. The police request shop owners to keep the shops open until the last customer. 311 people return home after being quarantined.
Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime News. Now, the number of COVID-19 patients here in Sri Lanka has risen to 95. 2 patients who were tested positive for the virus in the country have recovered.
227 individuals are currently receiving treatment over suspicion of having contracted the disease. Meanwhile, a community physician at the IDH hospital has tested positive for the virus. The first Sri Lankan to have been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the country has left the IDH hospital in Anguda after recovering. He is a 52-year-old tour guide who was diagnosed with the virus on the 11th of March.
Now, the President's Media Division said that the curfew lifted at 6 a.m. in the districts of Colombo, Gampaha, Puttalam and the 5 districts of the northern province will only be reimposed at 2 p.m. today. The public is requested to comply with the instructions given by the health authorities during this period.
The curfew, which will be reimposed at 2 p.m. today in the Colombo, Gampaha, Puttalam and 5 districts of the northern province, will be lifted at 6 a.m. on the 27th of March. Curfew will be reimposed in those districts at 12 noon on the same day. Curfew was reimposed in the remaining districts at 2 p.m. yesterday and will be lifted at 6 a.m. on Thursday, the 26th of March, and will be reimposed at 12 noon the same day. Travelling between districts during curfew hours is strictly prohibited, and guiding tourists to one place from another has also been prohibited. The President's Media Division said despite the ongoing curfew restrictions, farmers are allowed to continue with cultivation activities without hindrance, and essential items including rice are allowed to be transported. The President's Media Division added these activities should be managed properly by the Minister of Trade and Agriculture.
Crowds of people were witnessed at shops, pharmacies and fuel stations when the curfew was lifted in Colombo today. While most of the people abided by the regulations of health authorities, a correspondent stated that some had not done so. Several people flocked to the Narahempitiya Economic Centre this morning. However, these visuals show the manner in which the public had disregarded the advice of health authorities. Several people were seen at stores in areas such as Kolannawa and Mulleriyawa as well. This is the manner in which fuel stations and pharmacies were crowded this morning. This was the situation in several areas including Kotigawatta. Crowds were seen in Mount Lavinia and Ratmalana as well. A large number of people visited the Ratmalana dedicated economic centre this morning. Shops in Maradana were also crowded once the curfew was lifted. While crowds flocked to the Manning market, it was evident that the public did not take heed of the safety warnings issued by health authorities. This was the situation at the fish market in Paliagoda. This was the manner in which people visited stores in Chilau that were opened this morning. Our correspondent stated that while health regulations had been followed in the presence of security officers, these directives had been disregarded elsewhere. Large crowds of people were seen at supermarkets and fuel stations in Wattala and Jayala. This was the situation in the Puttalam district this morning. These were the scenes witnessed in 5 districts in the northern province.
Permission has been granted to transport vegetables to the Manning market and other areas from 4 a.m. to 2 p.m. on days the curfew is in effect. Now, the police have also issued instructions to refrain from closing down stores until the last customer in the queue is able to purchase goods. Police media spokesperson SP Jaliya Senaratne said that all police stations have been informed regarding this directive. These instructions had been issued to facilitate the public in purchasing their goods without any disruptions.
ශ්‍රී ලංකා පොලිසිය නිවේදනය කරනවා
The Sri Lanka police has instructed to refrain from closing down shops until the last customer has purchased goods even after the curfew is reenacted. The officers in charge of all police stations have been instructed to make the necessary arrangements in this regard.
අවසන් වන තෙක්ම ඒ සඳහා අවසර ලබා දෙන ලෙස
Now, 226 people were arrested for violating the curfew last night. Accordingly, the number of suspects arrested since last Friday has risen to 2,268.
ඊයේ රාත්‍රියේ ඇදිරිනි
226 incidences of curfew violations were reported last night. Police have seized 78 vehicles which were travelling without a valid permit during the curfew. Accordingly, 2,262 cases of curfew violation have been reported in total. 2,268 suspects have been arrested so far. The number of total vehicles seized stands at 579.
වාහන පොලිස් භාරයට ගෙන තිබෙනවා.
The first group of people to undergo quarantine upon returning in the country from overseas left their respective centres today.
This was the manner in which 108 people at the quarantine centre in Kandakadu were seen making arrangements to leave for their hometown after completing the 14-day quarantine process. They had arrived in the country from Italy, Iran and South Korea when the COVID-19 disease was spreading across several countries. Accordingly, 203 people also left the quarantine centre in Pune. Army spokesperson Brigadier Chandana Wickramasinghe said that 311 people had left these quarantine centres today. The buses will travel through Kandy, Galle, Colombo and Mathura.
After several days, fishermen in many parts of the island returned to work today after permission was granted by the authorities to all fishermen to engage in their livelihood activities during the hours between 6 am and 6 pm today. This was how the fishermen in Trincomalee engaged in their livelihood activities this morning. Fisheries activities were not permitted during curfew imposed period. However, following discussions between the Ministry of Fisheries and the Navy, fishermen were permitted to engage in fishery activities during the hours between 6 am and 6 pm today. After several days, fishermen in many parts of the island returned to work. However, many fishermen did not return to work today. Former Air Force Commander Marshal of the Air Force Roshan Gunathilaka has been sworn in as the new governor of the Western Province. President's Media Division said that the former Air Force Commander took oaths before President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. Air Chief Marshal Roshan Gunathilaka has previously served as the 12th Commander of the Sri Lanka Air Force and the Chief of Defence Staff. COVID-19 situation globally, the British government has announced strict controls on movement, telling people to stay at home in a lockdown that will be enforced by the police. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson announced the plan in a rare televised address to the nation after an additional 52 people in the country died from the virus.
The British move follows the imposition of strict lockdowns in France, Spain and Italy and slightly looser restrictions elsewhere as Europe reels from a pandemic that the World Health Organization has warned is accelerating. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom noted that while it took 67 days for cases to reach the 100,000 mark globally, it took only 11 for the cases to reach 200,000 and just 4 to reach 300,000. More than 6,000 Italians have now died from COVID-19, the disease caused by the coronavirus, nearly double the confirmed number of deaths in China, where the virus first emerged late last year. In the United States, the number of cases surged past 35,000 as the death toll rose to 495. Defense Secretary Mark Esper said the US military is preparing to deploy field hospitals to New York and Seattle as he acknowledged for the first time that the global coronavirus pandemic could impact military readiness. According to data collected, nearly 16,500 people have died from COVID-19 around the world. Nearly 101,000 of the 379,000 people who have been diagnosed with the disease have recovered. Cuba's government said it was banning Cubans from leaving the country yesterday, closing schools and suspending inter-regional public transport in its fight to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. Cuba has now confirmed 40 cases of the coronavirus that originated in China and has spread worldwide, including one 61-year-old Italian tourist who died. Now, according to the health minister, 2 of those infected are in a critical state. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern urged New Zealanders today to reduce contact to a bare minimum in preparation for a 1-month lockdown from midnight tomorrow. Ardern's government wants to move fast to halt the spread of the virus. She said Parliament will sit tomorrow to impose the state of emergency and lockdown. The Chinese capital is stepping up measures to deal with cases of coronavirus brought in by people returning from overseas. All arrivals into Beijing will now have to take a test for COVID-19 as well as complete 14 days of centralized quarantine. The Philippine Health Ministry has confirmed 39 new cases of the coronavirus, bringing the country's total to 501. The number of patients who have died from the virus is 33, while 19 have recovered. New South Wales, Australia's most populous state, recorded its highest daily rise in coronavirus cases today, and officials are warning of harsher penalties for anyone violating self-isolation orders. New South Wales identified 149 new coronavirus cases overnight, bringing the state's total to 818 and the national total up to 1,886 cases. 7 people have died from the virus. Thailand has reported 2 more deaths from coronavirus, with the total confirmed cases rising to 827. Thailand's cabinet is due to meet to discuss its coronavirus response after a second person died from COVID-19. The government will consider measures to address the outbreak later today. 76 new coronavirus cases have been reported from South Korea today, the 13th day in a row that it has posted new infections of 100 or less. The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says total infections rose to 9,037. 2 more people were confirmed dead, bringing the death toll up to 120. Myanmar has reported its first confirmed case of coronavirus. The health ministry said late yesterday that a 36-year-old traveling from United States and 26-year-old returning from Britain, both Myanmar nationals, have tested positive.
And that's a wrap of this edition of Lunchtime News. For the Newsfirst team, I'm Mazra Hassan. Thank you for joining us. Take very good care of yourself and God bless.